Welcome to the virtual couch.
Chris, it is absolutely wonderful to join you today.
It's good to have you here. When I go through your list of achievements in such a short space of time, it's exhausting. Was that always the plan? 3 different elite kind of careers?
No, not really. I had a passion for journalism when I was at school, but I also had a passion for law, and I was really in a bind as to which pathway to choose when I was doing my final year of schooling. So I obviously headed out doing all sorts of wonderful work in journalism, in radio, TV, and then, of course, pursued my passion for the law. But probably the career that I least planned was politics, but here I am, Chris.
We'll get to the sliding doors moment that led you into a political world, but your mum and dad were politicians, so there was some sign there early on.
Yes, well, they were great members of our Geelong community, and Mum was a member of Jeff Kennett's government and a cabinet minister. My father was a local mayor and councillor. He stood for politics, but he didn't manage to get there. But they were both really amazing inspirations in my life, very much focused on can-do. They gave me and my sister Jodie and brother Andrew the inspiration to do whatever we wanted to do. And so they were just both remarkable people. They both died far too young. In fact, it's 25 years since my father died, an incredible amount of time, but both mum and dad remain such a central part of my life. Barely a day goes past.
Sorry?
I was just going to say, Chris, barely a day goes past when I don't think about them.
Yeah, I could imagine. Now, when you think about the television career, a lot of people may have only known you through politics, but you were hosting the 7:30 report at one stage. Here's a little bit of a reminder to our viewers of what Sarah Henderson did first time round.
Good evening and welcome.
The experience of telling Lynn's story greatly affected Sarah Henderson too. She helped Lynn in her recovery, and when she became an MP, spoke about Lynn in her maiden speech.
What was it like to work for the ABC?
Well, as you can see, I looked a bit younger then. But look, the ABC is a great organisation. It taught me so much. I was there for around 9 years. I did the Investigators, I did the holiday program and the 7:30 report for a number of years, including hosting the Victorian edition. I think it was a really sad day when the 7:30 report went national. So the states lost their own current affairs program. But that's not to say there weren't trials and tribulations at the ABC, along with channels 9, 10 and 7, where I also worked. Compared to politics, I think the media game was a little tougher, I have to say.
Well, this is interesting because the big conversation in federal parliament at the moment is Malcolm Turnbull's bonk ban, which is being taken up by others in other jurisdictions, and a lot of talk about women, how tough they're doing it, and the Liberal Party trying to find candidates like yourself to take up seats. It's a great difficulty finding the right person. So given all of that, what do you think is a more dangerous environment to work in as a woman? Is it the political sphere in Canberra, or is it in those newsrooms that you worked in for so many years?
Well, Chris, I think it's a great honour to be a Member of Parliament. I really do, and I think it is wonderful to serve the community. And I have to say, in the Liberal Party, I have always been treated with the utmost of respect. Yes, I know it's a tough game at times, and particularly when you're trying to persuade people to vote for you and to get the numbers, whether it's at a preselection or in a general election. But the only abuse that I have ever received is from the Labor Party, and that's been pretty unpleasant. Even during the leadership difficulties that we had when, of course, Scott Morrison eventually prevailed, Peter Dutton and people who were supporting Peter, the likes of Andrew Hastie and Tony Passon, treated me with absolute respect. So I really do reject the notion that we have any sort of toxic environment in Parliament House. It is a far better environment than I ever experienced in almost any newsroom. In fact, I had a terrible incident at the ABC where a shocking executive producer used to scream obscenities in my ear when I was live on air presenting the 7:30 report, and I eventually complained about him and he was sacked. but I've seen many incidents of fairly questionable behaviour at television stations around the country, which is in stark contrast to my experience in politics.
That's interesting. That's interesting you say that, because there's so much focus on how behind the times federal political culture is at the moment, but that's an interesting take from a different view and someone who's actively inside the political circle at the moment. Can I move on to your legal degree? You churned out a law degree and then you ended up in New York and on the same floor as Rupert Murdoch. Please explain.
Well, I had a wonderful opportunity to work for a great law firm, Allen's, working mainly in commercial litigation. And I ended up with a fabulous opportunity to move to New York and work for News Corporation. So it was a very exciting time in New York. And I did end up on the same floor as Rupert Murdoch because they ran out of space in the legal department, which was the next floor up. But it was an amazing time during the dot-com boom and the bust. And of course, New York was absolutely alive. This is in the late 1990s, before obviously 9/11. And so it was a wonderful experience. I learned so much about the law and about the media game. And it was an experience of a lifetime, Chris.
And so you've walked into boardrooms and places to give advice on the executive floor. What was the executive floor like? Because some of us may never get there.
Well, as I say, I was only there because there wasn't enough space in the legal department. But look, it was a great thrill. I mean, New York, it feels like the centre of the universe, and I obviously worked there quite a long time ago now, and I have not been back. I'm absolutely busting to take my son back to New York. So it was incredible. It was a great insight into the machinations of an incredible company. And, of course, we had so many different properties, including the New York Post, which kept us all busy. But really, I was really dumbstruck when we had our very first boardroom meeting with all the other lawyers. I walked into the boardroom and I could see all the original sort of cartoon cells of The Simpsons, so the very early frames, and I was just so blown away by that because, of course, News Corp has created so many wonderful programs, including The Simpsons. But look, as I say, Chris, it was a remarkable time and great experience to work there as a lawyer.
It sounds like it. Okay, so we go from being a lawyer in the other part of the universe, and then you come back to Australia and you somehow found yourself a political candidate for the Liberal Party. What was the sliding doors moment?
Well, I came back to Australia actually because my mum was really ill and I needed to be home with her. And very sadly, she died about 18 months later. So that really did make me question my whole life. So I started my own small business, sort of media advisory agency. And then I moved to Sydney and I started to work for Network 10. I had a baby, my beautiful boy, Jeremy, who's now nearly 15. And then I ended up working for National Indigenous TV, which was also a wonderful experience. And it was at that time that Preselection opened for Corangamite because, of course, Labor was in the seat. Stuart McCarver had been there for 23 years. So it was an opportunity that I decided to seize. And when I moved back to Victoria and moved down to Bowen Heads, I just did everything I could to win Preselection. I was dissuaded by some, I have to say. But for me, Chris, it was all about representing my home.
So hold on a second. There were people who were saying you are never going to get this position from within the party?
Yes, these preselections can be pretty big battles.
Right.
In fact, one woman told me that I was not a fit candidate because I was a sole parent, and I found that pretty distasteful. And in fact, it was at that moment, Chris, that I decided to go for it. I thought to myself, you know what, I don't care if I get one vote. That's a disgraceful thing to say. Yeah. And I'm going to go for it. And, of course, the rest is history. I did win Preselection very convincingly, as it turned out. Very proudly embarked on a pathway to represent the Liberal Party. I didn't quite get there in 2010, but, of course, got there in 2013.
Isn't that interesting? And it applies to so many people in these walks of life where you get a slap across the face, and that is what you need to pick yourself up and say, I'm going to teach you a thing or two. I'll get that job.
Absolutely. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it. And, I mean, the Liberal Party is very much a change beast. We are doing so much to encourage women to join the party, to run for politics. And, of course, when I entered the Senate, that was the very first time that we had equal men and women in the Senate, and that was wonderful to see. So things have changed quite a bit. And we are very focused on increasing our representation, which is really wonderful.
See, that's interesting.
Women make wonderful members of parliament.
They sure do. And this is interesting, the point you have made. We keep bemoaning the fact that we can't get women to stand in seats, and it's true. But if you take the Senate, what is it, 38 apiece? It's close to it.
Yes, in fact, I think it's tipped over now by one. So with Lydia Thorpe coming into the Senate. So, yes, we have gender equality in the Senate, and we have really improved our stocks in the Liberal Party as well. And, of course, we've got a number of women in cabinet, many women in the ministry. And so I think things are really improving. But I mean, we are all here on merit, and I think that's really important. We all have to stand up and put our best foot forward, and that's why I don't support a quota system in the Liberal Party.